Hey folks, welcome back to the channel, your home for all content Lord of the Rings home. Today I'm going to be talking about top 5 tips to get maximum points on Chapter 1 of the Mines of Moria raid. These tips are going to be things that you've probably already thought of. I've got a few different strategies, but there are some basic things that I want to go over, take a little bit more of an objective look at, and kind of dig into that I think will help either for the next raid or a raid that you have upcoming. My guild finished the raid yesterday, and I spent quite a long time playing it. What this video is not is a foolproof, solved Chapter 1 raid video. I don't think the raid is solved. I think we will eventually come up with strategies and team compositions that do really, really well in the raid. I don't have those for you today. I'm not sure I've seen that many of those. But today I just want to give you some extra tips to help sort of maximize the available points to you for this first or second go around. Some teams that I think did pretty well. I've heard, I have not personally played, but I've heard that the Road to Rivendell squad did pretty well. That's good for Road to Rivendell people. They needed that win. Rivendell elves obviously did well. They sold us to that team. They sold us that team as a good raid team, it seemed like. So they did pretty well in Chapter 1. And then the other two teams I kind of want to talk about here are teams that I think everybody has, right? The Isengard 3 plus whatever, usually Ironhide and one other thing. I played with Isengard 3, Ajak, and Ironhide is one of my teams. And then a Rohan squad, right? Usually the Rohan 3 plus I used Halbarad and Strider, but people obviously mix and match a little bit there. And from what I saw and from what I played, Rohan 3 beats out the Isengard squad. And there's a few reasons for that. And what you kind of need in this raid is not going to surprise you, but it's speed, AoE, health sustain, like regeneration, and team up attacks. Not multi-hit attacks, but team up attacks, where you're specifically calling another character in to help attack. I also think cleanses are important. We're going to get through all of that. And I'm going to showcase that by talking about sort of Isengard. So, Isengard has usually Ironhide on that team, and Ironhide is this massive, he's got incredible AoE damage and health, and so he's just this good character, right? The issue is he's a large character, and so he's actually pretty slow. Then you combine that with the fact that one of the orcs has an AoE slow, the Skull Crusher, and he just doesn't seem to be taking a lot of turns, because on top of the AoE slow that you can get put on your team, they're getting like more speed as time goes on. The other orc team is, right? When they get those stacks of they're over here, whatever it's called. So the fact that Isengard does not have a way to cleanse is a pretty big issue. They have two team up attacks, right? Mauher has a team up attack, his special 2, and Ugluk has a team up attack, his special 2. And those are good, but they're not as good as the team up attacks on the Rohan team. Not to mention that a lot of sustain and a lot of healing comes from Ugluk's leadership, right? The ability to apply Banes to the other team. Because you spend so much time just attacking the bomber, you don't end up applying a lot of Banes, so you're not giving yourself that extra passive healing, and Dunhar just can't keep up, really. At least from, again, what I saw and what I was playing. What makes Rohan so good is, yes, they've got a cleanse, Eowyn's got a cleanse. They also have turn meter manipulation, but Éomer, Mr. Tummy Trouble himself, is, I think, going to be a very, very strong character for Chapter 1 of this raid. So let's talk about that a little bit. He has turn meter stuff on his basic, right? He gains 15% turn meter. Is that at max? It's 10%, 15% at max, just on his basic, right? So even when he's assisting, he's getting that extra turn meter, which sort of counteracts the fact that he's a pretty slow character. But I think one of the big things with Éomer here is his special 1. Summon a Rohan attacker, and you're calling a Rohan ally to assist. So just with that special, you're doing 2 good things. You're getting possibly 2 stacks on the bomber, like you should be saving this for when you're attacking the bomber. You're getting 2 stacks on the bomber, and you're getting a Rohan attacker, who is either going to soak up some unnecessary damage, but probably, and more importantly, is going to be able to also put stacks on the bomber. And that way you're kind of guaranteeing yourself the ability to get to 10. And you don't have to worry about RNG as much, right? His special 2 doesn't do a whole lot in terms of the raid, but this is an upgrade I think everybody should be looking at going forward. Level 5 on his passive. I think you get this at level 48 or level 50, I believe. But this means he's always getting that assist chance. So then when somebody else is using their basic ability, not a special, but like just using a basic ability so they can save their specials, then AMR is going to come in and put another stack on. So again, just his ability to put stacks on the bomber is like one of the best I've seen in the game currently. Another set of heroes that sort of do that are Feely and Keely. Let me go back. This is Keely. And that all comes down to Keely's basic. Attack target enemy 2 times, and then call Feely to assist. So I know it says 2 times, and then call Feely to assist. You might think, oh, that's 3 stacks. It's only 2 stacks because his 2 times is a multi-hit, only counts as 1, but Feely coming in also counts as 1, right? So just on his basic, he is able to apply 2 stacks to the bomber. In addition to that, let's go to Feely. Feely's basic gives a little bit of passive healing and regeneration to the team. So Feely hits him with the basic, Feely comes in, does his basic, and if you've got the level 2 upgrade here, heals the most wounded squad member for 5% of this character's max health. At max, it's 10%, right? That's just another extra bonus, added regeneration, sustain, survivability to the team that I think is actually kind of nice and needed for making sure that you're able to take a lot of these hits. So characters that have characters that have team up attacks that aren't these specials or ultimates are very, very powerful. And so I think AMR is really good, and I think Feely and Keely are really good. And for Chapter 1, I think the Rohan team edges out the Isengard team. Let's talk about speed. All right. The first person that goes on the Orc team is that Nuraz-looking guy. He's called the Shadow Seer, right? And I'm pretty sure... Let me sort by speed here. Let me find him. I'm pretty sure he just has the same speed as Nuraz, 161. He's slower than Ugluk. I don't have Sam. I think he's faster than Strider, so I just kind of assumed, oh yeah, they must have just pegged his speed to the same as Nuraz. That makes sense to me. Here's what's interesting. The Firestarter, the guy with the torch, the Mangler guy, which is the guy with the 2 swords, the Bomber, and the Skull Crusher, who's going to be applying AoE slows to your team and also just does a ton of damage, all have the same speed, and they have the same speed as Dunar, and it's 154. The reason I'm mentioning this is because I think your run will be a lot less RNG dependent if you can take out the Skull Crusher first, right? You have the same sort of lineup every single time you go in. This is a run with my Rivendell squad here. This is from my live stream, right? So this is always the same setup every time. And if you can take out the Skull Crusher first, that means you can guarantee he's not going to be applying slows on you. So you take out the Skull Crusher, and then these 3 go here, right? Firestarter, Mangler, Bomber, and Nuraz is already gone. And then because you take out the Skull Crusher, the next move the War Drummer is going to do is just to summon somebody in. That way you can focus a lot of your attacks on the Bomber that first round and set yourself up for a good first round, right? Making sure you get maximum stacks on here. Those speeds are only important at the beginning of the round, though. Let me be clear. Because when they get that, they're over here, passive stacks or whatever, every time they use a skill, that's increasing their speed as well as setting their turn meter when they get summoned back in, right? So that's just kind of a thing to consider at the start. If you've got a team that has like 3 characters that are faster than 154 and they do DPS, you might consider that as a good team because they could possibly take out the Skull Crusher. That kind of leads me into another point that I want to make. Teams like Rivendell Elves and RTR, I feel like they can punch up a little bit more in terms of difficulty. But if you're basically at around, maybe a little bit below, but definitely above the recommended power for the difficulty, it's going to feel a lot less RNG intensive. And I think that basically comes down to the fact that you are able to take 1 or 2 bomb hits and recover, and that you're able to get through some of the other characters that are very annoying, like the guy who taunts. So I'm going to go through some additional tips. some general gameplay ones for any team, and then I want to talk about one specific tip, I think, for Rivendell teams, which I know won't apply to everybody. So I can't kill the Skull Crusher here with my Rivendell team in difficulty 3. So he basically is going to always be applying a slow. He almost always does it to Elrond and Eldin because they haven't gotten yet, and therefore they don't get that fortitude from Elrond, right? Okay, let me skip ahead here, though. I'm basically getting as many stacks as I can on the bomber and hoping that on this first round he drops it on his own team, right? Eldin's going to be really important for the Rivendell teams going forward. He's basically your source of AoE damage. The wave does not come up enough, in my opinion, to be considered a viable source of AoE damage. So, bomber dropped on their side. Now what? We've got these 4 characters left. The Shadow Seer and the War Drummer can summon. So one thing that I like to do, I think this is a viable strategy. Maybe somebody else will disagree with me, but one thing I sort of like to do is I take out any War Drummers or any Shadow Seers on the field just to give myself a little bit more breathing room, right? Now I can use skills that don't require me hitting somebody. I can use passive like healing skills and that sort of stuff. I can get things off of, start to, work on cooldowns and whatnot before the next wave comes in, set myself up a little bit better. These guys are super annoying. So there's no tooltips in there, but these are the taunter tanky guys. So if your team can't get through them very effectively, you might have to consider going down a difficulty level. I think that will make things a little bit easier for you. Unless you just want to play the RNG slot machine, that's your choice. Okay. There's one tip I want to talk about with specifically in regards to Rivendell teams with Elrond, and it's to do with his wave. Okay, so here we go. When you get a fresh set up there, you can apply you can do Elrond's wave, send him into the drink, and apply that 2-turn slow. I think Wubate also has a 2-turn slow, and that's important because when the bomber then goes into his don't rush me state, you can't hit him. You can't apply debuffs, right? But because it's 2 turns, he doesn't cleanse himself. He continues to have that slow. The thing that's kind of sucks here, right, is that if a Shadow Seer comes up and they do their basic, I'm pretty sure they cleanse 1 Bane off of somebody. So it helps that everybody has it, but having that extra slow, which is not 50%, by the way, it's 20%, is really key in making sure you have the ability to get up a bunch of stacks. So that's just one specific tip I have for the Rivendell teams, but one strategy I employed was getting rid of those bombers, getting rid of those Shadow Seers. But the Skull Crushers are really important to take care of, and I think your team will do very well if you can take them out before they do their first move. Let me show you a fun little squad that I had. I got max out points with, actually, too. Let me go back. This is what I find fun, by the way, is being able to come up with some random comp that I think will work in a raid and just seeing how it goes. So it's Pippin, Fili, Kili, Miri, and Naramir. It is a 3 healer team squad. I'm going into difficulty 1. They're about 1.8k, 1.3k over the recommended power, so they should be able to do pretty well. I did get max points with them. Okay, there's me chugging an energy drink. Let me skip forward. Let me skip to, I want to show you, they mostly have level 1 abilities too, by the way. So unfortunately, because they have level 1 abilities, Fili does not heal on his basic here, but you can see right there, right? Kili does his basic, Fili comes in, that's an automatic 2 stacks. I probably want to replace Miri, but Miri's really fast, Naramiri's really fast, Pippin's really fast, and then even though the dwarves are not super fast, they have that ability to sort of make it up by getting those extra stacks. So I think, yeah, I get 10 stacks right here. And if you can get to 10 stacks, you're giving yourself a lot of good things because you don't have to rely on RNG then, right? So I really like teams like this. I think those will be interesting teams moving forward. That's all I have for today. Those are just a few of the tips and strategies. Making sure that you have the ability to take out the Skull Crusher, I think, is very, very important. I mean, you just might have to adjust your difficulty level. So making sure that you have at least a few characters that can work on that Skull Crusher. One thing I will say, right? if you have an Ugluk team, an Isengard team, and you think, oh, I can just blind the Skull Crusher, Ugluk goes before the Shadow Seer. So you put blind on the Shadow Crusher, or whatever his name is, the hammer guy, or the Skull Crusher, sorry. And then the Shadow Seer goes and he cleanses that blind off. So it just kind of, things are not working so well for Isengard. I'm not sure what the solve is there. I don't know if Moria is going to make things better, or what exactly the play is there. I'm curious to know what you all think. But when I was not doing an RNG run, and I had a little bit more control, I thought the raid was actually a lot of fun. I'm curious what you all think, and thanks so much for watching.